Is your baby turning one? Well, what happens when babies turn one? Well, suddenly they're part toddler, part explorer, and part tiny CEO with very big opinions. In this week's episode of Sense by Meg Faure, our regular guest, Nina Clark, is back. And Josh has officially crossed the 1-year milestone. We dive into what really changes when your baby becomes a toddler. From first little steps into big feelings and growing independence. So we're going to talk about 3 things in specific today. The one is the truth about early emotional outbursts. And I'm sure many of you have found, if you've got a little 1-year-old, that the terrible twos seem to have started early. Well, we unpack why 1-year-olds will have meltdowns when things don't go their own way, and how naming emotions builds emotional intelligence for years to come. We then look at the sensory personalities. Now, Josh is a social butterfly, and so we talk about his constant moving, his oral seeking, and we look at how that impacts his sleep, his eating, his picky phases, and even his fine motor control. And then we have a look at sleep transitions that actually work. So having a look at 1 sleep versus 2 sleeps, when do you transfer, and how do you keep nights on track? So it's a really packed episode for 1-year-olds. It's warm, it's relatable, but it's full of science. And so do listen in now. And if you love the show, please do subscribe, share it with a friend, so that you can help another parent as they navigate this journey. Welcome to Sense by Meg Faure, where we make sense of the science and art of parenting. Parenting is grey, gritty, and beautiful all at once. And my life's work as a healthcare professional is helping parents feel more confident in a season that can feel really overwhelming. In each episode, we share honest conversations with real mums, dive into the science with experts, and simply make sense of it all in practical ways. This is your space. You're not alone, you're held. So let's unpack the journey of a lifetime with sense. Welcome back, mums and dads, to Sense by Meg Faure. I am Meg Faure, and today we have our regular guest with us, Nina Clark. Welcome, Nina.
Hi, Meg. It's been a while, actually. I feel like our latest chat has been a bit delayed, so it's so nice to finally catch up.
It really is. And I actually thought to you that I would be speaking to you before Tiny, as we knew his name was in the first weeks of his life, before he turned 1. But as it turns out, he is a big boy now. He turned 1 last week, didn't he?
Indeed, yeah, he hit the big numbers. So yeah, it does feel like suddenly he is just a proper toddler already.
Yeah, it is so sweet. Well, I cannot believe it has been this long that we've been chatting. So we've been chatting for a year because we spoke just after he was born last year. So tell us a little bit about what it is in the life of Josh at the moment.
Yeah, so he is sure. I was actually trying to think about it now, sort of just quickly leading up to us jumping on what is sticking out to me right now. Let's start on the movement side of things. So he does little steps here or there, but he's not walking as his main form of main mode of transport right now. I think he still realizes that crawling is the quickest way for him to get to go. But if there's anyone within 1 meter radius of him, he will grab your fingers and hold on and mission. He won't let go until he gets to where he wants to be. And it is so fascinating to see how incredibly clear he is about where he wants to go. He really will like barrel his body in the direction that he wants to be in. And then I remember reading on a chat group recently, and I can't remember Maxie doing this, but a mom was saying how her sort of 12 and up month old was really starting to throw almost like a tantrum, or get like visibly upset if they didn't get their way. And I'm definitely seeing that with Joshy. I mean, he is good-natured 99% of the time, but if there is something that gets taken away from him that's obviously dangerous, which is obviously what they usually go for anyway, or he is being pushed in the direction where he doesn't want to be, as an example, he can get proper hacked off. So so I'm finding that really interesting. He really has a good cry if he's like disappointed by by what we're doing versus expectations.
So sweet. Well, I think let's pick up on both of those because they're both so lovely. So let's start with the walking. So walking is a very interesting milestone because it's such a hard-coded milestone, and most little ones kind of walk at around about the same age, somewhere, although I mean it's quite wide, somewhere between 10 months and about 18 months. So that's kind of when they walk, and most little ones will walk. Crawling, as you know, is not necessary. I mean, not necessarily the same. Crawling is just super variable. But of course, crawling is such an important milestone. So if my little one were crawling rather than walking, even at a year of age, I'd be really, really happy with that. Boys' average age for walking is 14 months, interestingly, and girls' average age for walking is 12 months. So very often girls do things slightly ahead of boys, so that's normal. So he is spot on because he's 12 months old now, which means he's got about a 2-month gap now in which, to hit walking as in line with the average. And to be honest with you, I think you'll probably find within the next 3 weeks, he will be a walker rather than a crawler. So he is absolutely spot on. So that sounds perfect. And then on the emotional regulation side, it's so interesting because it is slightly different to toddler temper tantrums. But we definitely do see this emotional dysregulation where they get very certain about what their will is and what they want to do. And when something is changed or there's a big disappointment or a terrible frustration, like for instance, taking away the TV remote or mom's cell phone, which are classic ones, they really do have a meltdown. And it's less about manipulating behavior than it is around actually emotional dysregulation, that I am so disappointed I can't regulate my emotions. And so I think we have to see it that way, that it's not behavioral, which it does in kind of the 2s and 3s, things change a lot. And willpower and kind of boundary pushing, that all happens then. This is not that. This is just I want that. Why can't I have that? Or mommy's leaving me, or whatever it is, or something that I was about to choke on gets taken out of my hands, and so that I can't eat it anymore. And it's just that huge frustration that comes in. And I always say, even before children are properly verbal themselves, they understand a lot more than actually what they can say, because our understanding language precedes our spoken language. And so I think at this age, it's still very important to recognize the emotions. So it's saying things like, oh, I know you're so cross. Mommy had to take the TV remote away. Or I know you're very cross because you can't have that, but let me give you something else. And, I think it's very important. And it starts so much at this age, and it follows our children all the way through into adolescence and in their early 20s, where if we have given them the words for how they're feeling, long term, the impact is enormous for them in terms of emotional intelligence. So, I think that starts right at this age where I know you're frustrated, I know you're cross, I know that you want that, so I often use the words I know or I think and then tell them. And he actually really will start to identify, and you will be so surprised that one day at 18 months old or 2 years old, he'll say, I is cross. And it's so good when they do that because they're identifying their emotions. And it can only happen if you're doing it at this age already for them and helping them to identify how they're feeling.
Yeah, because I know that when it comes to the toddler years and up, the experts obviously always say, you need to validate the feelings before you start reprimanding or whatever it is. Exactly, I suppose, for that reason. And I think that's brilliant to start younger. And just another thing that you said there, which I also wanted to bring up, was the fact that the understanding of the language comes before the speaking of. And that's definitely something that even in the past couple of weeks, I've just noticed more and more, which I'm just loving how he will react to his name. He will look at me when I speak. He will, have that like questioning face when I say something that maybe he doesn't understand. He will, stop and hesitate if I say, stop, don't do this, or, turn around or whatever it is. So he really does respond to what I say, which again I couldn't quite remember when that starts, but it is just so lovely to, I guess, it's that part of like serve and return, right? But then now you're getting so much in return, so much more than what you did earlier on. So that is also really lovely to just know this human is now actually understanding a little bit of what I say.
Yeah. And I love the way that you mentioned the word serve and return, because that phrase it's such a clever phrase because it actually starts on the day babies are born, like super little, like just for the newborn baby, just making eye contact, or mom sticks out their tongue and the baby sticks out the tongue. Those kind of responses just to facial expressions happen with the newborn. As we move on, we start to get a little bit of an understanding at about 6 to 8 months that my brain or myself is different from you and yourself. And so that's when little ones start to do things like point. And normally by about 8 to 10 months, a little one will actually point at a bird in the sky because they want you to look at it, or they'll point at the fridge door because they want the juice that's inside there, whatever. And when they start to do that, they're showing us that they've got what's called mind-mindedness, which is what's in my mind can be communicated to your mind because our minds are different. And that happens before they're a year of age, and it's amazing. He started pointing at the fridge or at the door, or wants to go if he wants to go somewhere.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Pointing, and also just like the sort of holding things up and then wanting to give it to you and just wanting to reach out to everything. So there's definitely a lot of movement with the hands.
And of course, that's serve and return, because he points at the door. You know that he's not actually wanting you to look at the end of his finger. You know that he's wanting to go out the door. Now he's communicating something from his mind, a thought that he's had. It's a miracle. He's got a thought. He knows how to get there. He points at it. He communicates it to you. Even when he can't say the words, let me out or open the door, he's communicating it. Now that is incredible serve and return. So that's amazing. And that's him serving to you. And then your return is to open the door. So that's serve and return, or to say, no, we can't go outside now. So that's serve and return. On the other hand, actually saying to him, I know that you're feeling sad, or I know that you're feeling cross, or anything. No, don't do that. Whatever it is, those things is your serve. And his return is now to go, okay, now I understand this. He now can't serve back and say, he can't come back and say, but I want to go outside, because doesn't have the language, but he can listen to you, he can understand it. And so that circle of serve and return is being reinforced from birth. And now we're at the point where they're starting to really understand things. And it is amazing. It really is. And I think I once read, and I need to go and find the reference for this, that expressive language, which is speaking and responding, follows receptive language by about 6 months. So the things he's understanding today will be the things that he's saying when he's 18 months old. And so, the individual words. So it's a very important time in their lives now.
Brilliant. And then, I think what I'm also just really enjoying at the moment is seeing the differences in development, or what's important to him versus what was important to Max at this age, or what he's stronger at, and not in a comparison way at all, but just to sort of have fun with comparison, I suppose. So where Max was so much better at sitting still and reading a book and sort of letting me read it to him, and touching and feeling all the little textures or whatever in the book. Josh just wants to play with it and close it and then flip it over and But then he's also very good with putting little things in and closing the lid and that kind of a thing, which I think is fascinating at this age already. Like, he's got such great fine motor skills, and he gets very into these like little fiddly bits, and then he just wants to do it over and over again, and he gets very mad when we take it away. So that kind of a thing is, just fascinating to see, I suppose, how their own little fascinations come out.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because what you're actually describing there is a very interesting trajectory, because first of all, he has a different sensory personality to Max. So Max was much more of a settled baby, we established early on, and certainly Joshie is much more of a social butterfly. Now, social butterflies tend to be geared towards sensory seeking. And that sensory seeking tends to be, although not always, but very often towards movement and what we call proprioception. So proprioception is the physical. So that's like when you say he wants to slam the book shut or open it or push something, or like, you said to me very interestingly just now, you said when he's walking, he almost seems to steer you with his body. And that's a proprioceptive, it's a strength and a proprioception, because strength and proprioception are two sides, muscle tone and proprioception are two sides of the same coin. So he is really using his body to get sensory information about the world. Now, what's very interesting about that is as you get in this proprioception, or this information from your bodies and your muscles that goes to your brain, it drives down from your brain back down to the muscles on a vestibular spinal tract to build muscle tone. In other words, to create strength and dexterity. And strength and muscle tone often allows our little ones to be a little bit more coordinated, because it's the foundation of coordination, and also good gross motor stability. So stability in our shoulder girdles in our body, which is what our proprioceptive seekers get, relates to fine motor, because it comes back down to their hands into fine motor, because you need good stability in your shoulder girdles in order to be able to use your hands. And he's showing that to us exactly in what you described. He seeks proprioception. He's a movement seeker. He's built up his muscle tone. He's a robust boy in terms of his muscle tone. And now it's gone on and it's actually leading into good fine motor skills as well. And that's classic. Today's Dose of Sense is brought to you by ParentSense, the expert-based parenting app that gives you daily support from pregnancy to sleep, feeding, and daily routines. Take the guesswork out of parenting. Download ParentSense today and use the code SENSE50 for 50% off.
And then I suppose on the two other topics, I suppose, that I just thought we could cover was the eating side of things and sleep. So eating wise, he just chows, this kid, literally all the time. And I don't know, I was saying to my husband the other day, I don't know if it's a nature or nurture thing where he's just hungry all the time, or I think I did say this to you, I tend to just the snack the whole time. And I was out with a friend the other day, and she's got a little girl the same age, and we were out for a good couple of hours, and this girl just didn't eat anything the whole time we were out. She had a little bit of boob at some stage, but that was it. I just thought, my gosh, I would have been feeding Josh probably 4 times by now already. But he does just show that he's keen, and if you're eating, he definitely wants it. And if, there's anything around that he can put in his mouth that's food, he's happy. But very interestingly, for sure, more picky nowadays, for sure, throwing the food down when he doesn't want it. And so, just really starting to see that it's not everything goes anymore, which I know is, again, right for this age, but it's just the funniest thing to see when he just like mic drops all the food that he's not keen on.
I mean, there's 2 parts to what you're speaking about there. So first of all, just the amount that he's snacking on all the time. I remember you and I having a conversation a couple of months ago, I think, or weeks ago, where we spoke about the fact that he uses his mouth to kind of regulate himself, which is very, very common with our sensory seekers, very common. So I think I may have mentioned to you at the time to get a vibrating toothbrush and pop it in your nappy bag and let him be able to chew on something like that when he's just seeking, because I just know that everything goes to their mouth with these sensory seekers. They seem to do a lot of self-regulation with their mouth, and food is one of those things. So they love to have something to snack on, even if it's a piece of biltong that gives them absolutely no nutritional value. It's just like, I can chew on it. And, so that's part of his snacking, will be his sensory seeking with his mouth. And then part of his snacking will obviously be that he's going to be a big boy, and he's just putting in the calories, which is awesome. Going on to the picky eating, it's so interesting that between 12 and 24 months, most toddlers go through a picky patch, and it can happen sooner or later. And actually, I had an incredible interview on our podcast in the last week of October, which flighted in the last week of October, which was with Natalia Stansenko. She is a dietitian who lectures at Columbia University in New York, and she's developed an app called Easy Bites. And it's a very interesting app because it really gives you little cues on what you should be doing, how you can, what foods you can introduce, and why this picky eating patch happens. And a lot of it, like, her and I had the most interesting conversation, but a lot of it centers around you relinquishing control. So it's actually a lot to do with the mom rather than with the baby. And so what they do is they go through a patch now where they just don't need as much calories. It's a big shift. They just don't need the same amount of calories. And so then they start to get picky. And what often happens in that moment is we panic because we go, they're not going to sleep. They're not getting enough nutrients. They're going to get sick, whatever it is. So our mind goes down the rabbit hole. And so then we bring that emotion to the table. But you must eat. You can't just eat beige food. You have to eat your oranges and your greens or whatever, So we immediately bring that. And it's that cycle that actually kind of facilitates this whole picky eating spiral. So in this podcast, Natalia spoke quite a bit about actually letting it go, putting on the table what are the win foods, the food, she called it safe. And she said, which I just loved, is that every mealtime has to have safety and connection. Safety around the food and connection with another human. And when you get those two things right, they tend to do better. And so the safety piece is don't put things that are challenging on the plate if he's going to really battle with it. Maybe just one thing, and also recognize that it takes 14 exposures, which we know with little ones, before they actually will engage with something new at this picky eating phase, because everything might not be safe at that time. So kind of building a plate that he can control, that you don't have to feed him. He can feed himself because that's what the stage dictates, and let him define how much he's going to eat. And then know that 2 hours later, there will be snack time. And 2 hours after that, there'll be another meal. And 2 hours after that, there'll be another snack time. 2 hours after that, there'll be another meal. And before you know it, they've kind of had these 5 really solid opportunities to eat in the day, 3 meals, 2 snacks, and you actually covering the bases. So, try and get your anxiety out of it and just go with the flow a little bit was kind of her secret. And if you go and listen to it, you'll actually hear right at the end of the episode, we give a voucher code for free access to her app as well. So please do go and have a listen. It was the last week of October, as I mentioned.
And then on the sleep side of things, interestingly, I found that he was giving all the signals to drop down to 1 nap already now at 12 months. And we started doing that, I guess, before 12 months, actually. So it's probably been going for about a month now. And it has been fantastic. It's been such a wonderful change. Just for all the reasons that they say, obviously, to just check the boxes before you start implementing that. But his wake windows have always felt longer than other babies at that age. He just wants to jaw and doesn't want to go down when it's the short sort of recommended wake windows of that age. And so we started sort of just pushing his morning nap a little bit later. And then he just automatically started doing he always had a long nap in the morning and then a very short nap in the afternoon. But as always, it was a massive fight to get him down for the second one. Or he just needed it so late because that wake window was so long.
And he wouldn't go down for bedtime.
4:30, and then bedtime would be crazy late. And so, he sort of just stuck with his nice long morning nap, which he maybe extended by half an hour or so to make it 2.5 hours. And then we just slowly but surely started increasing the time, or just pushing it a little bit later, that he had his morning nap, which he just was always happy with, like his mornings were just, he's just been such a easy sort of one napper, I suppose. Pushing that later, and now his bedtime is a normal time, and it is just fantastic. So I know that it is a little bit earlier than what it should be.
No, it's spot on. It is spot on.
Oh, fine.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All the research that I did, very quick sort of ChatGPT research was, start from sort of 14, 15 months onwards.
No, definitely not. And actually, if you'd asked Aya instead of ChatGPT, because she's based on all of my stuff, then she would have definitely told you 12 to 14 months. So the earliest I would recommend is kind of just before 1 year old, kind of a week or two before. And then I definitely, if they haven't dropped them by 14 months, you absolutely must drop them. Otherwise, they're going to have more wake ups at night and they're going to push out their bedtime. That's or very early morning waking. So those are the 3 things that they do. They either wake very early in the morning, wake up regularly at night, or push out bedtime, which is what he was starting to do. So I think it is absolutely spot on what you've done. What I often find is that just in the days after it started, they sometimes, maybe once or twice a week, actually need the 2 sleeps again. They just can't make it to that midday sleep. And so you just do 2 days or a day of this, so kind of it would maybe be once every 3 days, and then once every 4 days, and once every 5 days, and once a week. They will just need 2 sleeps. So that does happen. So don't worry if you can't make it past 10 o'clock, let him go down and just know you'll have 1 extra sleep that day. So be flexible with it. But it does make a huge difference. And I think often, I call them cusp ages in my Sleep Sense book. I think very often people miss it, and they happen at 9 months, they happen at 12 months, and then they happen again at 2.5 years old approximately. And each of those is a drop of one sleep. So you've caught it spot on.
Okay, amazing. Great. Yeah. And I mean, his nighttime sleeps are fine actually at the moment. I'm sure we'll have a teething phase again at some stage. And we've been through a winter of intense illness. Honestly, I feel like my 2 years have had every single type that is possibly possible.
Well, thank goodness we're in summer now, so we don't have to worry about that too much. Yeah. Um, that's amazing. And you know what's so interesting, Nina? I don't know if you listened back to the podcast that we do, but and the podcast with you and I from 2 weeks ago was all centered around sleep regression. It was a very interesting episode. It was an extra long episode. Moms, if you hadn't listened to that, do go and listen. It was in October last year, which is where we are now. Well, we actually now in November. But Nina, I was so fascinated because it looked like you were really battling with him at the time, and yet now he's a year of age and pretty much sleeping through. Am I right?
No, he slept through for the first time probably 2 days ago, for the first time in months and months, but he has maybe 2 wake ups a night, and that is for either a quick settle or a quick feed. We went through it felt like a couple of weeks where he would wake up at some stage, maybe 2, 3 in the morning, and really just want to not properly settle. So not completely jaw in the middle of the night, but just not want to like go down and need a couple of resettles for an hour or so. But at the moment, touch wood, he is, sort of just needing a quick little something. But there's often nights where we can hear him self-settling. Like if we don't, we try not to, rush in straight away. But if we do pause, then we can actually hear him sort of having a little, and then suddenly it's just quiet. So he's definitely learning to just chill out.
Well, that's amazing because he had over the course of the last year he's had some fairly firmly entrenched habits at different points, and he's obviously navigating that a little better. Couple of little pointers. First of all, because he's a social butterfly, he needs a lot of movement in the day. So I think I may have mentioned it to you before, and it is in my sleep course, which is on the app. Get a swing and swing him long and hard in the late afternoon because he will need that. Limit TVs completely in the late afternoon, particularly because that definitely wires their brain for wake ups at night. And then because they suffer so much from FOMO, if he thinks it might be a chance that somebody's awake, he's more likely to wake. So don't use a nightlight with him until his imagination develops. Try and keep his room really nice and dark. So those are kind of the main key features. And then with regards to his night wakings, try not to feed him if it's earlier than 3 a.m. Try and see if you can do water or patting or something like that. And then only after, if it's after 3, 4 a.m., then actually do the feed. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, 100%. So hubby does the before, if there's multiple, then I tend to go in if it's earlier on in the night, if he just keeps waking up, because then I just feel like maybe he's hungry or something or needing proper comfort. But if there's just one wake up earlier in the night, he usually tends to go in and just quickly resettle, because it's just always quicker when he goes in, because I think there's no expectation from Josh that like there's going to be a whole comfort that feed anything. So the hubbies just know how to get them done quick. And when it is later on, then yeah, I do tend to give him a quick feed. But I just wanted to actually mention, because when you said the screen time thing, so I never put him in front of a screen. We spoke about screens a couple of months ago, and I said, Max doesn't get screens during the week, so there's like no exposure for Josh then. But over a weekend, a Saturday and Sunday, he can watch a little bit. So, the play area for Joshy is right sort of in that big general area. So, there might be a screen on in the background. But it's so interesting because I remember for Maxie at this age, again, we did a similar thing, I suppose, if we were watching whatever it is, then, but he would like to, he would actually give the screen attention if something was on, whereas Josh just doesn't, not savvy, not interested for a second. And I find that so fascinating. Again, I suppose, a little comparison there.
And again, it like replicates exactly what we were talking about, their sensory personalities, where your settled baby might be a little bit more drawn to visual. I mean, you even mentioned earlier that Max would sit and look at books with you, whereas Josh will move the books. And it's exactly the same thing. Max will be attracted to the visual of the TV and maybe the auditory as well, whereas Josh needs movement. So like TV's such a boring thing. And the problem comes when little ones are put in front of screens and TVs. So for those moms who've got social butterflies, like Joshie is, if you start to use screens to keep them calm, keep them quiet, keep them entertained, you actually do them such a disservice, because their natural instinct, which is to move, engage, get that sensory input, is then kind of almost like they almost lose their natural instinct. Their intuitive approach to sensory changes. And that is when you start to see some very, very serious problems coming through in little ones, where they start to use screens and not get enough of what they need, which is a proprioception or vestibular. And then you've got all sorts of problems coming up. So I think being conscious around screens is just so important. It really is, which you certainly are. Well, Nina, thank you for letting us follow your journey with Josh. It has been such a pleasure. You've been such an insightful guest to have along regularly, because you ask such interesting questions. So I really do appreciate it. So thank you so much. And moms, we will have Nina back as Josh is a little bit of an older toddler, but it won't be as regular as it has been. So just a huge shout out and thanks to you, Nina.
Oh, Meg, thank you always for your time. It is always incredibly interesting and so helpful.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope today's conversation brought you a little more clarity, calm, and confidence on your parenting journey. If you enjoyed the episode, please do share it with a friend who needs to hear it today. And also go and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss out on an episode. I'll be back next week with another episode, same time, same place, and always here to support you. And in the meantime, download the ParentSense app to take the guesswork out of feeding, sleep, weaning, routines, and everything in between.